Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Wanted to say an incredible, huge thank you to Mr. Stephen Kirwin, one of our dear friends, Brutal Buddha aficionados, one of the very, very first people to rock the Brutal Buddha gear. I think he has probably the very first sample that we ever had. So without further ado, today is the 25th of January, 2023. We are kicking off with our third podcast episode. This is the Brutal Buddha Longevity Podcast. And this will be a long-term series, no pun intended with longevity, of all things that touch health span, longevity, physical, mental, emotional health, and well-being for men as a primary focus, but overall, all humans, women as well, people across the board, even touching on kids, right? Stephen's a father. He can touch on, so many different elements of health and wellness. But, first and foremost, want to let Stephen introduce himself. Stephen is a world-renowned physiotherapist, also does deep sports massage work, body work. And I can say and testify for myself, and I believe Ro as well from over the years, we've both experienced Stephen's unbelievable, what we call in the massage world, the magic touch, right? Really getting into places within the body, within the human anatomy that you've never even known existed before. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Stephen Kirwin. Please share a little bit about your background, where you're from, how you came into the space, any experience that you have, that you'd like to share with the audience before we kick off.
Okay. Hey guys, thanks for having me. Brutal Buddha, can you see it? There's the Buddha.
Oh, we can see it.
There you go. Yeah, there you are. I'm coming at you live. I'm at a place called Sumali Muay Thai Camp in Phuket, Thailand. Nice. And as those guys said, I've been doing body work for about 30 years, and I started in Colorado. So I was heavily involved in the Ironman world and mountain bike world. And after university, I was thinking about what I wanted to do, and I wanted to go to be a paramedic. And I was like, I just wanted to take a year to get something that I could make money in before I went to school or fireman school. And it just took off, and I've never really looked back. So I had a really busy private practice in Boulder, Colorado for like 15 years. And then I came to visit my cousin in Asia, in Bangkok, and the rest of the next book got written, and I've lived over in Asia for about 20 years, basing myself in Hong Kong and in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And so I'm doing integrated bodywork therapies, and it's a combination of Eastern modalities and Western sort of soft tissue neuromuscular work. Yeah, that's a quick overview. Yeah, so I've been doing it for a really long time. It's actually all I know how to do. It's really the last job I had. I was waiting tables at a place called The Med in Boulder, Colorado. So I've never worn shoes to work. I still have no idea really how to tie a tie, and I just marched to my own my own drum, really.
I love it. I think it's so incredible when you meet someone, whether they're practicing physician or somebody who decided they want to do philanthropy for their whole lives, but they've known from such an early age what their calling is. And it's obvious to me your calling is to help heal people, right? And I've been to many, many sessions with you, and while we preface it as a physical manifestation, being able to, release, toxins in the body, release stresses and tensions, there's so much to the other side of the work that you do, between the music you play and the sharings, from an educational standpoint that you pass to your customers and your community. That's so profound, and it makes your practice, at least from my view, one of the most unique and best global practices that I've ever come across, right? And in my time in North America, living in Europe for a bit, and then of course, for some time in Asia. So all of that said, I wanted to thank you again. And, we'll talk about a few cool topics. So the first being this piece around resilience, right? Like you out of all people would know from the 12, I believe 12 Ironmans, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. 12
Ironmans. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Kirwin has done 12 Ironmans. That's 12 times 112 mile, a 2.4 mile swim, right? For those of you who don't know, followed immediately by a 112 mile bike ride, and then a 26.2 mile run. So a marathon to end it, right? So typically it takes people in the ballpark, on average, I'd say 13 to 15 hours, right? That's the average Ironman. This man did it in just over 10 hours. if I'm not mistaken.
10:36.
10:36. I mean, that's a machine. So let's start there, right? From the physicality standpoint and the mental, focus that you had to train and accomplish, that 10-hour mark, just over 10-hour mark, which is not far off from the professionals who do, eight and change, I believe. So share with us a little bit about your journey, from over the last, 2-3 decades of physical health, which you've obviously carried forward into your life and are practicing, different facets of physical health, through jiu-jitsu, martial arts, and still doing trail runs. So share with us a little bit about that, please, Stephen.
Well, I got into the triathlons while I was living in Boulder, Colorado. It just happened to be that my passion before triathlons was rock climbing, and I had fallen and open fractured my left fibula. So I was sitting on the couch recovering with a cast that went up to my groin, old school style. And I saw the Ironman ABC Wide World of Sports. Who remembers that? Howard Cosell in introducing it. And I tuned in and I saw like a 73-year-old woman crossing the finish line. I was like, I'm going to do that. So the next year, after I got my cast off, I think it was like in June, I did my first triathlon that September. And the next year was 1991. And I did my first Ironman that year. So I kind of went full bore. That's kind of my character, to just go right into it. I just wanted to do that event that I saw on the TV. So that was like 91. And that carried me through, I think I was doing the sport actively for like 20 years. And I did my last Ironman was, I came out of sort of retirement and I did the 2016 Ironman Malaysia, where it was unbelievably hot. And that felt like that was good. That was the final one. So that was 2016. Since then, I kind of shifted my focus and started lifting weights, doing Muay Thai. Immediately, my weight shot up about 20 pounds of muscle mass that I knew I had the potential to do, which I never did during Ironman because it would just been too much weight to carry around. So currently I'm, as you said, I love trail running. I love going to the gym and doing strength and conditioning work. And I really love Muay Thai, which is where I am right now. I'm doing a 10-day intensive Muay Thai camp before I come back to Hong Kong. So that's 55, I'm still trying to stay consistent and still rocking. I mean, obviously I can't even 55. Do nearly what I used to. 55.
55. I mean, think about the things you've accomplished so far at age 55, and then what is to come, given that you're still so deep and passionate in the world of sports and fitness and mental health. I think it's really incredible. And you're such an inspiration for us, Ro and I, who are in our 30s, but also so many of our fans out there, middle-aged, trying to fight through challenges and stresses, and especially with the COVID pandemic, which you've obviously endured a lot of stress through, amongst millions and millions of people across the world. It's just impressive that you just keep going, right? We've done trail races together. We've gone into the gym. We've done weights together. And the thing that I love most about you is you're just so present, right? You're present when you're deep in it. You're present. You're focused on the day to day, and it's that kind of long-term thinking that gets you to where you want to go. So I just want to pause and see, Ro. You obviously have done races in your life. You're an ex-rugby player. You've lifted weights, pretty religiously over the years, but you've just ran your first Spartan race, if I'm not mistaken. And I know that took a lot of focus, a lot of training. Share with us, have you kind of learned over that training and through the Spartan race, this concept of mental fortitude? And have you picked up on some of the things that Stephen has preached about over the last 34 years?
Yeah, absolutely, Evan. So I did just run my first Spartan race, November 14th in Boston, at Fenway Park, where the Boston Red Sox professional baseball team plays. And it was great. Growing up, I've been mostly doing team sports, as you said, weightlifting, rugby, other types of physical activity, but I just wanted a new challenge, similar to Stephen. I tend to either kind of go all in on something, or I'm kind of like not doing much. Like I don't have much of a middle ground. I'm either training for something intense, or I'm kind of, sitting on the couch, not really watching TV these days, but, I tend to have kind of one side or the other. And I did train, I trained pretty hard for the Spartan race. And it was great. I think I learned a lot about, pushing the boundaries of, there were a lot of the 20 obstacles that I thought, I wouldn't be able to do. For example, the rope climb, the rings, the farmer carry. There were a lot of these, obstacles that I really had never done before, even in the training. And I thought I wasn't going to be able to do it. And on the day of the race, I was able to do it. And I think it was 90% mental, is what got me through the race. And I finished everything. So yeah, I can definitely relate. I haven't done an Ironman, more or less 12 Ironmans, but I think a lot of it was mental for me, pushing through when you're tired, and just almost like creating an out of body experience when you're going through pain. You got to create almost like an out of body experience for yourself, where you need to kind of pump yourself up and say, look, you can get through this. Don't worry about the pain. You're going to finish. And yeah, that's really what I took away from it.
That's awesome, bro. That's really, really cool. And I think it's this kind of sharing to our community and, amongst each other here on this call that really helps us to push for the next thing, right? Whatever that next thing is, to just keep going. So I would ask you, Stephen, who would you say is your top couple, heroes in the space of mental fortitude, of long distance training? I think we've talked about David Goggins, being a potential role model. I'm just curious, over the last 3-4 years, have you started to, branch out as far as who your mentors are in this space that people can look into and find on YouTube, for example?
Gosh, I still follow the guys who were winning the Ironman back in the day, like Dave Scott, who was undeniably one of the best Ironmans ever. And he's like 63 and he's still smashing it. As far as the modern day guys, I mean, I like David Goggins, but I like if you've ever heard of Rich Roll. So Rich Roll was a plant-based guy. He wrote a book called something. He was finding his fitness in his 40s. So he came from a background of cocaine abuse and alcohol abuse, and then changed his life, became a vegan. Now he's got an amazing podcast, and he did these Ironmans where they did it on every single Hawaiian island, called the Ultraman. But yeah, those guys. I mean, I follow. It's my old school mentors. The triathlon still capture me.
That's awesome.
Sorry,
That's so
sorry.
cool.
I had to change my locale. The Muay Thai trainers looks like they're getting ready to do a private, and they're turning on the rap music. So
no worries. We all love rap music, at least some. So yeah, I think it's really cool that you continue to follow these people through their lives, because it seems that's part of what motivates you, right? To really push yourself to new limits and follow people that, in your 20s and 30s, you were watching and observing and following. I think it was so cool when you introduced, what was it? The Ironman Cowboy to me. Did 100 Ironman.
Yeah.
100 in a row. So yeah, I mean, to me and people like David Goggins, it just makes you realize, at least from a mental standpoint, right? It makes you realize that anything you're going through, you can get through. If human beings have the ability to get through some of those things, which, seem unfathomable to the average person, then you can get through most things in life, and especially with the help of community. So want to bring it there. When it comes to community, right? You've gone through a lot over the years, and especially through COVID, as a traveling sports massage therapist and healer, international healer, right? Like, you bounce all around from United States to Europe to Asia, which is such a cool perk of the job from my perspective. But for you, it also had a downside during COVID, right? Like, you were stuck in some places, you couldn't necessarily reunite with your family. And you've talked a lot about this on other podcasts. Can you give us the high level overview of like what you took away, especially in, I would say, a bit of the aftermath, now that we're, a few months past, like the intensity of the laws around travel and restrictions and being shut out? How does it feel now? And what are your key 2 or 3 takeaways from the experience?
Well, I think the thing that got me through it, that year of separation was staying consistent with meditation, with working out, and being of service. Those are the big things that I did. And you went on some of these walks with me. Coming out of it, looking back and seeing what happened to me when I let go, even just briefly, you let go of that grasp onto staying consistent and just getting up and doing the grind. The health effects were disastrous. I mean, you saw it. I gained 10 kilos. I was, this was a lot during the sadness of being trapped away from my family for a year. But it just shows me, the utter importance. Is like, you don't have to like shoot for the stars and be so focused on being the best athlete. Just stay consistent. Just show up. Show up.
Show up.
Showing up,
and
just staying consistent. I mean, you guys are young. You won't see it, but by the time you get another 20 years, you'll be very thankful that you guys stayed consistent with the practice. Because, it's like, I look at guys my age, most guys my age, and they're not an example of health. And I'm not saying I'm a prime example of health, but I have stayed consistent, and I have done that at least during the decades of my life.
It's fascinating to me. I think this concept of community and giving back is one of the things, as men especially, it's such a good feeling, right? Like there's typically, a genetic makeup where we want to serve, we want, deep down, right at the core, we want to give back, we want to help others. And that's part of what Brutal Buddha really resembles and is dignified about is this concept of giving back to the community, helping people with living a better life, aka health span, but also living a longer life so that they're there for their loved ones, their grandchildren, hopefully their great-grandchildren, deep into their 80s and 90s, and not so utterly crippled. So I think you're a huge role model in all those three categories, and it's really profound. So we'll be sharing that, those 3 points in the comments below. And I think it's really cool for us to talk about. So Ro, curious if you have any thoughts on these 3 points before we move forward.
Look, I mean, I think they're definitely strong points. I think, to me, like you said, consistency is really key. Meditation, I kind of naturally meditate, I guess, quite often when I'm, rather than going into a specific practice. But I think the benefits are hugely profound. I mean, you hear all kinds of, Olympic athletes or, people that are at the top of their game, whether it's professionally, or in other areas. And a lot of people quote meditation as sort of the number one way they make it through things. So I think all your points you mentioned, Stephen, are really powerful. And, it's a lot of them actually tie into what we do here at Brutal Buddha in terms of, what we promote to our community. So I would just echo what you said.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. So, it sounds like you've integrated this personal wellness journey into your professional life, your family life, everything you're learning is kind of a cascade effect, Stephen. And for us, it's really refreshing to see your long-term view on things. So when it comes to longevity, right, and living a long, healthy life, how do you look at purpose and fulfillment, right? So many of us in the world are doing jobs that we're not so passionate about. We're kind of going at some points in our lives, right, going through the motions, or like waiting for the weekend, or waiting for these big, huge special events in our lives, whether it's a huge birthday or a celebration or a New Year's Eve party, whatever it is. How do you make the most of every single day and live and lead a life of purpose?
I think one of my mentors in northern Thailand stated it. He looked at me one time, we were talking about similar stuff, and he just looked at me, he goes, "How's your relationship with the divine?" So you can define that however that may be, but that brings a lot of connectivity into the universe. My mother she died just last month. One of the things she said to me was like, "I just can't imagine people who don't have any faith." So faith in your relationship to the divine is super important for me. And that keeps me going when because the physical body, it wears out. I mean, I'm experiencing it now coming in older. So, hey, you just can't do the stuff you used to do. So you transform your power into the power of belief, power of prayer, power of faith, power of being of service. I hope that answers you.
Yeah, I'm just taking a moment because, obviously as close friends, we've all been in discussion about your mother, and I appreciate you being, so open with the audience today. I think it was so beautiful how you and the family viewed it and looked at it in a beautiful light, right? Like really reflecting on the good that she brought to the world. The pictures you sent me had me in tears. I mean, I'm a hyper emotional person. So yeah, my girlfriend many times thinks it's a little bit comical, especially in the movie theater, but it serves a purpose, right? I go really deep, and I think the three of us on this call, we really internalize things a lot. So I think it's a cool way to look at the world, to look at different phases of life, before, during, after, and I commend you for that. I definitely commend you for that. So thank you.
Yeah, when you get to this stage of your journey, and when you're around people who are starting to check out and go to the next dimension, it makes you think about yours is coming up too. So clarify that and clarify your connection to the divine and the existence of internal energy. But in that time, try to stay as fit and as strong as you can. Give yourself that freedom.
I love it. I mean, you, out of all people, are teaching your boys, right, to get active, to focus on mental health, to be open, to have open dialogue, to express their emotions. And I think, for Ro and I, as, aspiring parents, at some stage of our lives in the coming years, I think it's really cool to see, like when I see Noah on the jiu-jitsu mat, absolutely crushing it, or Ronan, hitting the weights with you, it reminds me that you have to pass down the knowledge to future generations. And we really look to do that, on both ends of the spectrum with Brutal Buddha. So yeah, I appreciate that insight. It's really deep. Sorry, I think you're going to say something.
No, I got lost in listening to you.
No, all good. So I would just ask before we start to wrap up here, and we'll have Ro bring us home with any final thoughts, and a couple things. One, where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you, if they're interested in what your world tour looks like, if they want to follow you online? What are the top couple places, whether it's email or website or Instagram? Let us know so we can put it in the comments.
Probably Instagram, Stephen Kirwin Therapies, and then the website, www.stephenkirwintherapies.com. Email I don't do so much of, but the Instagram I'm much more active on.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Good to know. So the last thing I would ask is, Brutal Buddha's mantra so well over the last 3 years, right? You saw it born, in the onset of COVID, right? Late 2019, early 2020. We had to stay resilient. We had to be persistent because we couldn't ship for almost, the upwards of a year, right? Till late 2020. And that was definitely a slow start for us, but, many businesses didn't even make it through that first year, right? They had to shut down, they had to pivot, they had to do something else. We've survived, and that's really because of mentors like you, practitioners like yourself who believe in us, and also our wider community, right? We have thousands of fans. We've just rolled out the new shirts. So this is the Flow Performance shirt. We've got the hats, which are really cool, keeps your head warm. And then of course we have the new Freedom Joggers, which can't show the whole thing, but you can see here. And, I think with these three items on top of the shorts, we're really starting to expand our line for men and eventually women. So, I would just wonder from your perspective, knowing what you know about Brutal Buddha, the people who, back us, like Joint Dynamics, Andrew Cox, etc. What do you think is the direction, right? Whether it's martial arts or mental health or nutritional services to help people with their diet or sleep services, whatever it looks like, what would you say are like the top two things that you personally would love to see in the coming years for Brutal Buddha as we expand?
I think you guys, I've told you this hundreds of times. I want to see you guys get into combat sports. I just think with the name Brutal Buddha, that's where it's got to go. And it's such a huge market. And getting into running stuff. I love you guys as your product, and you guys as people, but the product, I mean, I've done literally thousands of miles in the mountains, and I've worn your shorts only for the past 3 years. They're great. And I don't say, I love them. I mean, I've gotten other shorts about some fancy shit down in Colorado, and Brutal Buddha was way, way better. So I use them because they work, and I really like them. And I've gone through Hind, Patagonia, all these different brands. And yours, the only brand that I don't get the chub rub between my legs at, like, you know, doing a 50K run about kilometer 35, you start getting a rash. No rash with Brutal Buddha, man.
I love that. That's amazing. And thank you for those tips. For anyone out there who's interested in our gear, especially the bottom wear, you know, as Stephen alludes to, the shorts and now our new Freedom joggers, that comes out if you're a distance runner or you know, or ultra Ironman or anything along those lines. They've lasted that long. That means that it's less than one penny per mile. So check us out, brutalbuddhagear.com. But the reality is, for our podcast series, we really want to focus on value add, giving back to the community and having real heart-to-heart discussions. So I guess with that, before we wrap up here, Stephen, is there anything that we've missed today that our fans would love to know about, that would be really cool? Any final thoughts, tips, tricks as it relates to the overall essence, right? The overall you know, purpose of health and wellness, what it's really for?
I would just say, witnessing you and Ro, you know, the unrelentless dedication you guys have done to make this dream come true, and to bring these amazing products to guys across the planet. I mean, when you guys were doing that last launch and you were just pushing and pushing and pushing, I was like, you have everything it takes to do an Ironman, and I think you should do one day. I'm really impressed with you guys. I just like your product, and I just want to see you be successful. It makes me happy.
I promise. My father's a big Ironman athlete. You are. So in honor of, you know, you and your mother and my father and his father, I'll definitely be doing one. So mark my word. By the end of this decade, I will have done an Ironman.
Right on. Decade's a long time. Cool. How about 2 years?
Done. I love a good challenge. Done.
Yeah.
So with that, we've got about 3 minutes left to wrap up, 3-4 minutes. So I'll go ahead and pass to you, Ro, for any final thoughts, any pieces of information you want to share to wrap it up today.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. And thank you, Stephen. You know, it's definitely been very inspirational for me. I know you pretty well, and Evan knows you pretty well. And we love you as a person. We love you as a customer. And, you know, you're a huge inspiration for us. So, you know, keep at it. And I guess I'll just close with, you know, if you could give yourself, you know, one piece of advice when you were our age, Evan and I's age, right? I'm 33, Evan's 34. You know, what piece of advice would you give yourself, you know, when you were that age, for some of our fans out there? And we have fans we've got customers in their 20s, in their 30s, 50s, 60s, 70s. But yeah, I would just be curious, Stephen. I
would say, save your money and do hard things. Save your money wherever you can. So you save your money, put it so you can do good stuff with it later, and do hard stuff. Make yourself suffer into brilliance.
I love it. I absolutely agree with you. You know, I think, yeah, obviously, you know, being able to, you know, support yourself and others financially is always a good thing. And the earlier you start, the better, especially when you look at, you know, things like compounding interest and all that type of stuff, where if you're 20 versus 30 versus 40 versus 50. So I agree. And yeah, I think Evan and I have both been through some pretty challenging and kind of traumatic experiences in our life, but we've also pushed ourselves really hard, you know, physically. You know, like we were talking about earlier, Evan's done, you know, he's an ex, you know, semi-professional basketball player, really intense basketball games. He just did the High Rocks competition for the first time.
I was there. I watched him.
Yeah.
I watched him suffer in the burpee section.
I remember, Evan said, I'm not ready. And he got ready. And it's the same for me with the Spartan race. I was like, I'm not ready. I'm going to push it. And I just, said, screw it, and did it anyways. So,
you're never really ready. I didn't feel ready for any of my Ironmans. I always felt like I needed another month. You're never ready until you just got to do it, man. Just got to do it.
Exactly. And, the truth is, Evan and I didn't know anything about apparel. We didn't know anything about, men's fashion. And we were just really excited to help guys live a longer, healthier life and get active and, be able to, spend time with their grandkids when they're in their 70s and 80s and not have to worry about things like heart attack and, diabetes and all these conditions, which, unfortunately plague 30 to 40% of American men. So that's really the mission of Brutal Buddha, is how do we add, 5 years on average to the life of an American man, and eventually an international man and women when we get into women. So we just really appreciate your time today, Stephen, and your knowledge and your insights. And I can't wait to see you if you come through New York sometime, and look forward to having you on another podcast sometime in the future.
Right on, guys. Awesome. Cop Kun Cop.
Cop Kun Cop.
Thank you, Stephen. Stay brutal.
All right, guys.
And look forward to seeing you soon, okay?
See you next Friday, buddy.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Safe travels. We'll be in touch.
Stay
brutal out there.
Love you guys. Stay brutal.
All right.
Stay brutal. Love you too, brother.
There we go.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
See ya.